First up, I need approval of the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion for support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. Next up, we have public comment. Is there any public comment? Last call for public comment. We'll move on to approval of our agenda. If there are not any changes, we need to approve the agenda.
Minutes.
Pardon me? What'd I miss?
Minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. You can move ahead, okay. Okay, I need to approve the minutes from May 9th, 2016.
Support.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Next up will be item 4B, Sheriff, Emergency Dispatch Shift Leader Positions.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Before you, we have a request for 4 full-time shift leader positions. This would be additional FTEs added to emergency dispatch. Obviously, as you know, we have a significant amount of overtime costs in emergency dispatch. The surcharge increase that was approved by the voters, this was one of the key points that we spoke to the voters on, is the need to increase staffing and have a dedicated line of supervision within emergency dispatch. So this was one of the needs that we addressed to the voters as to what the surcharge would pay for, and obviously the surcharge was successfully passed. The collection of that surcharge will begin on July 1st. So during the review by L.R. Kimball and Associates, Central Dispatch staffing levels were considered one of the key points or one of the key problems. Within that, the supervision, which had been historically conducted by the Rural Patrol supervisors or Rural Patrol sergeants, that relationship had always been difficult, but became more difficult when emergency dispatch moved up to its current location in the Human Resources building. So we developed a shift leader job description. This is with significant input from the Human Resources Director and input from other counties who utilize a similar format as to what their job responsibilities, job duties would be. We outlined that. That has been brought before the union, and a letter of understanding was created and approved by the union. That will then be bargained into their contract at the next contract cycle. So obviously the surcharge is going to pay for the full-time equivalent positions. Finance Director Mr. Latham was kind enough to assist us as well and affixed a cost to that, which you will see in the agenda item, and the job description is in there as well.
Just one comment. I had thought I had recalled the initial plan for 3 supervisors, but I talked with Mike. That was the original thought, but after discussions, apparently it was determined that 4 would work better, and that was with the input of HR, so I'm okay with that.
Correct. We'd always talked, or at least I did when I was presenting at a variety of local meetings, about the range of 3 to 4. The logic being is that right now we have 3 shifts, obviously 8-hour shifts that are around the clock. If one of those shift leaders was to have time off or to become sick, you still have a vacant shift leader position with 4 of them. That allows us optimal coverage. It also allows us, because these are working shift leaders, to provide that additional coverage. Or in the future, which has been talked about by this bargaining unit, if we were to move to a 12-hour shift format like some public safety agencies do, you would have 4 distinct what we call divisions or sections of employees, 2 day shifts, 2 night shifts, and that would provide a shift leader for each one of those sections of employees within that 12-hour shift. So looking forward, if we move to that, that would still provide us enough flexible coverage costs across that range.
I can see how we're going to get the phones answered real efficiently by adding another employee. How will this pull down the overtime hours?
Well, obviously, each one of those positions out there has to be fulfilled. We have a dedicated position for each one of those dispatchers, and we can't just leave one of those positions vacant. If you recall, when we built the new 911 center, there is 5 distinct positions. The thought or the hope had always been to make that 5th position that sits off to the side an oversight supervisor, or in this case, shift leader position. So number one, you're going to relieve the burden amongst the 4 dispatchers, because this will be a working supervisor, so they can pick up They can either pick up calls or they can pick up the dispatching of calls. For instance, obviously, if there's 4 positions, 4 functioning positions, there's county law enforcement, there is the phone position, there is fire and city police. Those people need breaks throughout the day. Obviously, they don't just sit straight 8 hours there. So as one of those people gets up and goes on to their break, the rest of the workload is spread across the 3 operators still there. So you have someone else that's essentially picking up this individual's job while they're on break. That won't need to be present anymore. That 4th or that shift leader position can pick up that break spot, so everyone still has their specified function or coverage, thus spreading the burden and the workload more evenly across 5 people instead of the 3.
Okay, I'm all for this. I just don't see how it's going to reduce the overtime hours.
Well, again, if you have 4 people and one of those people calls off sick, we have to fill that spot. With the shift leader position, depending on what the workload of the day is, we may be able to move employees or be able to move staffing around so we don't have a full 8 hours of overtime coverage. Maybe we only need to fill 4 because the shift leader has some 4 hours of responsibilities and can pick up the radio for the rest of the 4. Will it completely eliminate overtime? No, but it will impact it, we will reduce it. But more importantly, from a liability standpoint, we are creating a clear structural outline of supervision there, instead of having a road patrol supervisor try to cover not only law enforcement situations in the road patrol, but also 911 emergency dispatch. So you create a clear structure there. A lot of these activities that may not be addressed immediately can be addressed more quickly by the shift leader.
I'm sure you know what you're doing. I don't know how to run a dispatch, so
Well, sometimes.
you have my support. Commissioner Elwell.
Yes, I mean, the overtime can be, that could be a symptom of a lot of different things, but in this certain time period, we've had a lot of people leave, or some that have not been able to make it through training, or some who've taken other positions, and once we can get those people trained, a lot of that will be eliminated, but again, in a 24-hour first response type of situation where we have to have people there will always be overtime, but this shift leader position will make an impact on that. Also, the casual employees that we're trying to bring on will have an impact on that. That, in my opinion, is one of the lower concerns, because once you have a full staff and you have people present, overtime will kind of take care of itself. The bigger concern is the supervision and chain of command and a lot of these things that need to be taken care of as an oversight type of position with emergency dispatch. That's correct. And all those positions can see everything that everyone else is doing. So yes, that shift leader would have oversight of all 4 of those positions operating to making sure that cars are dispatched in an appropriate time manner, or if there's a major catastrophic incident, that person can provide backup and support to whichever incident that radio is focused on.
One final question. When do you expect these people to be in place?
Well, relatively soon, and I'm not going to put a firm timeline on that because it'll mainly depend on what type of applicants or candidacy that we have within, because one of the situations that we have is if we hire somebody as a shift leader from outside, let's say no one in 911 dispatch, and I don't know whether this is the case or not, but let's say no one has any interest in this position, we'll have to look to the outside. That person would have to be trained on the functioning of our 911 system, our policies, et cetera, before they could become a shift leader. So it could be relatively quick. It could be a couple months. I would suspect that we'll have at least some internal candidates. I'd be surprised if we didn't. So I would say that probably it'll be a tiered approach that we'll have some shift leaders relatively immediately. And again, we need to get some of those people trained on the processes of supervision, send them to some various trainings, but probably we'll have some relatively soon, and then probably some applicants from outside.
Any
Mr.
further
Chairman, I
discussion?
just got one question for the
Sure.
administrator, really. Mike, this increase from 3 to 4 is not that big of a deal with the surcharge money. There's sufficient funds there for it, correct? And it won't have any negative impact on the radio project either, correct? Okay. I'd so move the request.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimous. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Under Sheriff. Next up, we have Karen Kaufman, our treasurer, talking about foreclosed properties.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
So we have two reports today. We'll start with the purchase of the tax foreclosed properties. This is your second look at this. If you recall, I presented this out at the study session. And basically, this is a request on behalf of myself as the county treasurer and as well as being the chair of the Jackson County Land Bank Authority. So the packet that I put together indicates a request from the land bank to acquire or to partner with the county to acquire 4 tax foreclosed properties that went through the cycle this year. And in the packet of information, I identified the 4 parcels that the land bank is interested in acquiring. There are 2 in Blackman Township, 1 in Leone, and 1 in Summit Township. The land bank is intending to pay for the taxes that are due and owing. If the county is agreeable to taking these 4 properties under their first right of refusal, then we would prepare the deeds and transfer them to the county and then to the land bank. The land bank would then pay for the taxes, and then the land bank would become the owner of the properties. The intended use of all 4 of these properties, there's 3 houses, 2 in Blackman, 1 in Summit. It's the intent of the land bank to make the necessary improvements and rehabilitate all 3 of those houses and look to sell them on the real estate market. And then the 4th property is a dilapidated, blighted trailer that's sitting in a trailer park in Leone Township, and so we would look to remove that structure and green space it. Are there any questions with regard to the request?
Any discussion, committee? Okay, we have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimous. And we'll move
Great.
on now to the treasurer's report, item D.
Yes. So this is the quarterly report that I provide for the board, and it's just information only. So the report looked a little different. There's no action that needs to be taken. It's just more or less me providing information. So the first bullet point that I had on there was the monthly investment reports. They've been sent out on a monthly basis to the commissioners, and they are all posted to the treasurer's page. I did include a quick summary of May's activity there for you to look at. The next item that I wanted to report out is that we did a delinquent tax mailing. It was at the end of April, early May, and as part of that mailing, I included a new opportunity for tax-paying citizens to pay delinquent taxes that are due and owing. And this is in the form of what's called an automatic payment for delinquent property taxes from your bank account, or an ACH. I included the form in the packet so you can look at what was sent out to the tax-paying citizens. We've had requests in the past from citizens as an option of paying and helping them pay delinquent taxes. So this is just another way to make it easier for the constituents and the citizens to pay their taxes. When the form went out in the most recent mailing, I was very pleasantly surprised to see that we had a lot of interest in regards to this. So I received notices back from approximately 28 citizens, and so I'm in the process of collecting 31 ACH payments. Some of those taxpayers had multiple parcels, that's why there's a difference. But now, the way this is set up is if the tax-paying citizen wishes to do a one-time payment, they can. Or if they wish to do a recurring payment, they also have the ability to do that as well. So, and I've had both. I've had some do a one-time payment and made the taxes paid in full, and now I've got some that will be drawn from their bank account per their request on a monthly basis. So I'm excited to offer this new opportunity to the citizens, and it seems to be successful so far, but we're right at the very beginning stages of it. So I wanted to at least inform you of that. The next item that I'd like to update, dog licensing. Thank you very much to the board for approving last month the payment structure change to allow a 3-year dog license. And we are in the process of implementing an online dog licensing program. We're very close to rolling that out. We just did some staff training on Friday, and we're looking to roll that out by month end. So that'll be another value-added service for the citizens to take advantage of renewing their dog license online if they so choose. That's not going to take the place, obviously, of selling the licenses in the office. It's just another way to accept revenue and payment for the licensing. The next item I wanted to update on is, you are all well aware that the county treasurer foreclosed on 2 sites formerly known as Michener Plating last year. One site at Mechanic Street and the other site at Angling Avenue. When I foreclosed on both of those properties, there was known contamination at both sites, and I reported that out to the U.S. EPA. They came in and have done cleanup at both of these sites, and I'm happy to report that they have now finished removal of the hazardous substances at both sites, and the county had requested an opportunity to take a site visit to look through the properties and see the work that has been done to date. So we scheduled a date, Wednesday, June 22nd at 9 a.m., and we're going to start at the Angling Avenue site. The EPA will be there, the DEQ will be there, I believe the Brownfield group will be there. Commissioners are all you're invited to attend. I'm very pleasantly pleased with the amount of work and removal that the EPA was able to do within less than a year's time. And it's good to know that those substances are no longer in Jackson County. They've been removed safely and taken care of. So the DEQ, just so you know, is looking to activate on the site to do the second phase of remediation on both of those sites. So the DEQ is there, and they're looking at using some of their remediation dollars. I don't know if it's going to be super fund from the DEQ or just remediation dollars. That detail has not been worked out. But so we're looking to have continued cleanup and testing at both of those sites from the DEQ's perspective. So it's still ongoing, and it's good news to know that they're going to be able to do an analysis and tell us what we can and cannot do with the property for future use. And then lastly, the land sale proceeds report. Every June, I have to report this, it's an annual report that to provide land sale proceeds. This report, hopefully you're familiar with it, you do see it once a year. This is a cash basis report, and it's designed to reflect the cash available for general purposes. It's a cumulative report, and it accounts for the sales of tax foreclosed properties, the purchase of tax foreclosed properties from the 616 or the delinquent tax revolving fund, and the amount of monies owed to other funds and the land costs inventory. So this is just an annual report that I need to provide to the Board of Commissioners, kind of showing you the activities for the prior year. And that is all that I have to report out, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Chair Shotwell?
Karen, in the past, your office has been helpful in assisting to try to get one credit card vendor through the whole county, and we ran into other obstacles, I know, that were outside of our purview. Has that been explored at all recently with current administration or anything, or the opportunities going forward?
Myself and the finance director have been talking quite a bit about getting an RFP together. In fact, I'm more than 80% complete with an RFP to roll out. Now, as you know, it's all-inclusive. We could be looking at an RFP for banking services and also include credit card. So, and that can be very comprehensive and very complex when you put the two together. I'm not sure if we've got a timeline in order, but we are working on it.
Okay,
Any further discussion? Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, fellow commissioners. You have in front of you actually a request that in the 10 and a half years I've been here at the county, I've never had to bring forward to committee, and that is window washing. And one of the hallmarks of a professional organization is having a professional or striving for a professional appearance. And for me, one of those is having clean windows. So based upon that, you can see we went out and solicited bids, received 2 out of many calls that we made, and based upon that, I took the lowest bid and brought it forward to committee.
Rick, you said you've never had to bring this before committee. Why is that?
Well, in the past, we had Maitland Window Cleaning out of Jackson, Michigan, that performed this work. Well, our last bill from them was $5,475. And that was for all of our buildings.
So to be clear, it wasn't because we chose not to ever wash windows. It was because the price has increased to a level where it warrants coming to the committee.
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The IT report is shown on my agenda that we missed, but we got a couple of things here with Rick.
In front of you, you have a request for concrete repair for the Jackson County Department of Transportation overhead door entrances. As most of you know, the Elm Street facility was constructed in the 70s. It's a beautiful example of modernistic architecture. It's just due to age that we have deteriorating concrete under just about all of the overhead doors. We went out and solicited bids to make those repairs, and in front of you, you have the request for approval. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In front of you, you have a request for replacement of the underground storage tank at the courthouse. This is a underground storage tank that contains diesel fuel. It's one of these issues where 2 years ago we were notified by our insurance carrier they would no longer offer insurance for our underground storage tank. We've gone through, put money in the budget to remove the tank and replace it with an above-ground tank, just like we've done with all of our other buildings. The reason the courthouse had that underground storage tank was because 911 was located there. Without 911 being there, there's no need for a tank of that size to run the courthouse for 5 or 6 days. It's also why at 911, at Human Services, we replaced it with a natural gas generator, so we weren't under these constraints. Then the state wanted to complicate it a little bit more and demanded that we have trained operators, just like if we were a service station, to be in charge of this underground storage tank. So really, it's a timely removal and replacement with an above-ground tank.
Rick, just a couple of questions. Do we have any others besides this one, or is this the last one?
This is the only one, sir.
Okay. And is there a reason why we didn't do natural gas at the time it was put in?
The tank, or the generator was installed, I believe, for Y2K. Again, this was done before I got here, and try to retrofit a diesel generator to natural gas, it was pretty much cost prohibitive. So my preference is always to use natural gas. It's just, I have to live with what we have.
So the generator itself has been there since '98 then?
Correct.
Would we be wise to be thinking about replacing the generator now and switching to natural gas or not?
No, I would recommend against that. It's a generator with relatively low hours on it. I believe we'll get another 10 to 15 years out of it.
Okay. And what size tank are we going to put above ground? Certainly not 4,000 gallon, right?
No, it's the, let's see, 250, I believe, is 250 gallons, just like all of our other tanks.
Thank you.
Not, I need a motion. Support? You have a motion, support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimous. I believe you have one more, Rick. Animal shelter parking lot.
Last one, I promise. You have before you a request for parking lot and driveway expansion at the animal shelter. I believe Director Hayduk can agree with me that there's times where we have so many customers there that we run out of parking spaces. Also, that driveway's only one way. So if you have one person turning in on it and another person leaving, it's rather dicey. Again, this is why we put money in the budget to take care of these two issues.
I'd move the request.
Commissioner Shotwell?
Director Shealy, there was discussion with an adjacent property owner to have a shared driveway. Mm-hmm. Did that come to fruition at all, or were we not able to accommodate their uses with our uses?
From my perspective, Mr. Chair, for those of us who live in the city, the last thing you want is a shared driveway. And we have the money in the budget to address this as such. That's as far as I went with this.
My concern is the curb cuts and having other driveways coming out onto Spring Arbor Road, which is a 4-lane road and 45 miles an hour. I just wondered, did we even have a discussion with that adjacent landowner, or was it just thought that it was better off to not have it?
For me, I believe it was better off not to have it. Again, I'm looking at the big picture for the county's interest, that having our own driveway, in my opinion, is the best way to proceed. It's so much less complicated if we ever had to dispose of the property. Or conversely, again, I live in the city, you can have a good neighbor with a shared driveway, they leave, and then you end up with someone who's just not so good. I think by the looks on folks' face, you don't know what I'm talking about. It's one of these issues where in the city we have a lot of shared driveways. If someone visiting the neighbor next door with the shared driveway parks their car, you can't get out. And I'm not saying this, it's going to happen in this case, but again, it just makes things much more complicated.
Thank you. If I may, I did speak with Rick about this briefly as well, and part of my concern there was, as he's indicated, when we were talking, our drive is pushed over against that side of the property there. I was concerned that if we were going to put in or we're doubling the width of our driveway, that it be on the county's property. Now, that does not preclude the potential down the road for actually having a shared driveway, some kind of a lease agreement or something like that, but at least the driveway that we're installing is on the county's property, not on half on ours and half on this other piece of property or anything. I do think, as Commissioner Shotwell has indicated, that is a busy road, and, more curb cuts just complicate things. Plus, there's a guardrail there that we might have to consider down the road. But frankly, until such time that they have a site plan and are in a position to really explain how they're going to use the property and where their cut would be and those ramifications, I think right now we should just proceed with our driveway as outlined by Rick, and not necessarily to preclude the potential of a sharing arrangement later, because they're not parking on this driveway. It's a driveway you drive in and into a parking lot. A little different than someone's parking driveway in front of their house. But at the same time, it does complicate life as far as we'd have to have a contract, spells out maintenance and repair and, those kind of challenges. But at this point, I think we're good as it's been outlined.
Thank you.
There we go.
Morning.
What are those red dots?
Pleasure to be here with you this morning. I recognize that I have a little bit of a lengthy presentation, but I'm not going to cover everything on my slides. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. And if you have any questions on any of the other material or anything else, I'd be happy to answer them. Oops, that's not the one. Okay, there we go. My apologies for the delay. I'm following the format similar to what I've followed in the past, and I'm just going to go through and point out some of the highlights. If you see anything that I didn't cover on the slide, please feel free to ask me any questions. This is an update on the telecommunications side. We made a big initiative recently, which you folks approved, to move from a traditional telephone company to a basically a internet type of company. So we moved from Windstream to Comcast. Basically, we've had a few delays due to obtaining pole permits, but the permits are in place. We have preliminary data connectivity, and we will soon be cutting over into the phone system and getting that transferred over. One of the benefits that's coming out of this is that because this is a internet type of service, the remote sites such as Park that have poor connectivity will now get improved data connectivity as a result of making this change. This is the same as before. I think the first item on hardware is the only item I really want to focus on this slide. As we've been reviewing the network infrastructure within the county, we've noticed that we are scheduled for a refresh on the core switches in the network. And these core switches can be re-architected in a different way that more closely fits the functioning of the county network. We have some preliminary estimates in place as to what it's going to take to do that, but the bottom line is that if we re-architect according to what we can do now with newer technology and fit the switches to what the county needs, we anticipate that we may have a cost savings of over $100,000 when the time comes to replace. In actuality, probably the biggest estimate could be that we could save as much as $200,000. On the software side, we've been bringing in enterprise-level approaches. So these are tools that enable us to manage a large deployed base of computers and workstations. I just want to highlight some of the things that we've done here. We brought in a product from SolarWinds that gives us network management capability so that we can troubleshoot the networks more quickly. And I tend to play a little hardball in negotiating with vendors, so we got a 25% discount off of the price. Likewise, with the database management tools, we were able to get a 33% discount. And then we moved over from a older product to Dameware, and for what we originally paid for 2 licenses, we now have licenses for all of the techs. I think one of the big things is the last item. We have had security awareness training for county staff. This is something that's becoming a important issue, and cyber knowledge is very important so that if staff receive emails containing malware, they know what to do. Moving on to some of the other areas and facilities, we're in the process of vetting a new key card system for the tower. And we've been working with facilities on the 11th floor. So shown here in these next photos is a sneak preview of what the 11th floor looks like as of last week. The upper left-hand corner is taken in the cubicle area. The upper right is our conference room. And on the bottom is a deployment workbench. In the past, staff have worked on machines on a onesies, twosies kind of approach. Now we're working on being able to work with 8 or 10 or more at a time. This should improve the efficiency for deployments. There's a list of some of the projects that GIS has done. Another new item with new technologies in the health department. They have a number of clients that come in to watch videos that provide them with health-related training. And in the past, they've used things such as DVD players. Because of the costs and inconvenience of swapping out DVDs and handling DVDs, they requested a new solution. So we moved them to a technology called Raspberry Pi. And this basically allows the content of the DVDs to be loaded on board this device, and they don't have to swap DVDs. They have a remote control, so when they take a client into a office to see this, they activate the remote control, and the client gets to see the presentation. I think that stands for itself. We are supporting the JC Radio GPS project. We talked about connectivity to the parks. I think the big item here in the court and sheriff departments is increased connectivity. We've troubleshot, and we believe that we've resolved connectivity issues within the courthouse and the courtrooms, and we've also upgraded some of the laptops that are being used by the prosecutors at trial to improve their efficiency. FOC has had deployments. We've also put in a new surveillance system, which is absolutely incredible. It's state-of-the-art and works very, very well. The only item here is the last item. We have a password reset capability, and I'll come back to that in a future slide to fill you in on that. We continue to invest in training and education for IT staff. This training relates to the virtual environment, to cybersecurity, and to the processes used by the FEMA protocols under the National Incident Management System. Last item on this slide is the item I wanted to focus on here, and that's the fact that we are working on a new website. There's a new web app that will come along with that after the site goes live. We've had stakeholder meetings. We've received feedback from the participants, and shown here is a prototype of the new homepage for the website. It has more of a clean look and feel, has more of the 21st century kind of technologies, and will provide a significant number of new features for the departments. This is still likely to be tweaked a little bit before we go live, but I thought you might enjoy a sneak preview. Going on to the data center, our data center continues to grow. As you can see, I've put in some historical data, and the number of servers continues to increase, as does the number of databases. And I think one item I'll highlight is under the number of exchange mail accounts. The board recently approved a change in email policy, which allowed us to reduce the number of email accounts. This is important because we have to pay licenses on a per account basis. So reducing the number of accounts allows us to reduce the cost.
Don, how can, on that note, how can we have 1,001 email accounts with less than 500 employees?
Email accounts are used for a number of reasons. They're used for employees in their email. The telephone system is tied into that, so we use something called unified messaging. If somebody calls on our system and leaves a voicemail, accounts are set up there. We also have internal, we also have internal mail distribution lists that are involved, and as a result, the number of accounts will be larger than the number of employees.
Okay, and then lastly, the parcels in GIS, how did we get from 82,000, well, mid last year to 78,000 now? Aren't the parcels the parcels?
Well, I looked at that, and I had asked GIS about that, and my recollection was that there were, I guess, some changes in the way that they were accounting things that made a difference. I can get you specific detailed information, certainly. This is a chart of our workload. The little blip on the left represents the time that we've implemented the new help desk system, but we average between 500 and 600 trouble tickets per month. Now, shown here is something that I thought I'd share with you. As we become more and more of the enterprise perspective, we start analyzing the trouble tickets that we get. This pie chart shows where most of our time is spent, and you'll notice, for example, that software is a large component. So by bringing in Dameware and providing remote support capability, we're reducing the need for staff to travel to offices or remote sites on the county campus to troubleshoot a problem. So this allows us to take care of more problems quickly. The login issues are being addressed by the password reset capability, because many of these requests are from folks that have been locked out or have forgotten their passwords. And then the last item that is shown here is the website. We've had a change in the technology of the website that will empower the departments to author content for themselves. So there'll be a greater opportunity for them to get more content, get it in quicker, and be able to do so in a faster and more efficient method. Yes.
Commissioner Alexander.
Thank you. My question is regarding websites. So currently, the Department of Transportation is not on our county website. They still are their own entity. And I can probably make that assumption, but I'm just asking for clarification, because they're waiting to transfer over till everyone is over? I mean, because till we have the new website up and in place?
Yes, part of the agreement with the vendor is that they will migrate existing content over to the new site. So we've had great participation from JCDOT and stakeholder meetings, and we're working with them to migrate their content. And as you know, there'll be additional content that'll be put up as a result of the GPS tracking system that they're implementing.
Okay.
Further questions, discussion? Mr. Overton?
Don, taking off on what Commissioner Alexander said there, we don't anticipate all departments moving over, though, do we? I mean, the sheriff's department, I know the number of elected officials have separate sites, or has that been contemplated?
It's been contemplated. The approach that we're taking is that we welcome anybody that wants to come and join us. We've had participation in the stakeholders meeting from the Sheriff's Department, and we basically welcome any of the departments that are on their own to join us.
Well, that part I realize. I guess to be more specific, the question was, who's taking us up on it? Because anybody? I mean, anybody committed to moving their materials?
We've had participation from Sheriff's Department, so I'm assuming that things are good there. District Court, I believe, has also been involved with that. And
We have links.
yes.
And the link is...
Certainly. I thought I'd share some information on email statistics with you. And it looks cluttered, but this is the kind of view from 30,000 feet that we're getting from our tools now. Take home from this is that about 2/3 of the mail that comes to the county is spam. We have approximately 6,200 emails coming in per day. In other words, we're getting one spam email every 14 seconds. And as you can see in the lower right-hand corner, there are some alerts for viruses because much of the email that comes in carries malware. And I guess with that, I'm open for any questions, and I guess while we're looking at that, I'll let you look at the Jackson skyline.
I have a question, Don. You're mentioning that our phone service is going to transition over to being online, internet phone service?
Yeah, internally we have a voice over internet protocol, which is a sort of an internet-based, it's packet switched. What we're doing is our provider that provides connectivity from our buildings to the rest of the world, what used to be a traditional telephone company, and now it's Comcast, which is a provider of voice and internet services.
Okay, what would happen if our computer system goes down like it did a couple of weeks ago, where we had to go to Chicago and get a new part? Would that shut our phone system down also?
Well, because everything is network-based, there are some issues with regard to the configuration of the network, which we're currently working on. One of the reasons that we decided to move to Comcast, besides the cost savings, is the fact that they allowed us to replace fiber that we're leasing from another party that has some attenuation losses and basically has like a 20-kilometer run that has a little bit more of risk in terms of coming down if something were to happen. The other issue that I think you're looking at with regard to the outage that was there earlier is there has been some changes in the protocols that are being used to analyze the network infrastructure. So we're expanding our uninterruptible power supply, or UPS protocols, for preventive maintenance. And with the change over to Comcast, we're getting a service level agreement, which means that they agree to have a technician on site within 4 hours of a trouble call. There's also some possibilities that, given their network infrastructure, that they may be able to reconfigure and provide a faster response while they repair any damage that might occur on their network.
Morning, Mr. Chair. What we have before you is a resolution authorizing the issuance of Michigan transportation bonds for an amount not to exceed $14,190,000. This is the next step in the process that ultimately will go toward the sale and use of the proceeds. Previously we spoke of 14 million, but we're also adding in the issuance costs, in other words, the legal fees and the consulting fees of our financial managers in this amount, so that approximately $14 million is available for JC DOT for purchase of the equipment and so forth. The difference here, two things to point out, since these are Michigan transportation bonds, the 45-day notice period is not required. And more importantly, from the county perspective, the bonds will be repaid through Act 51 road funds and so forth. Included in the material is a late addition. We have a tentative schedule in that once the Board of Commissioners approve this resolution, then the following month will be the bond sale around July 21st. With proceeds being available sometime in August. So, thank you.
Just briefly, if I may, is that okay, Jim?
Sure.
Thank you, Jim. I just want to highlight a couple things that are supplemental to the staff report. First of all, the debt service on this bond will be covered. It's just about $1 million a year, correct, Jim? The debt service is basically being covered by the new road funding bill. You might remember there were two components, the gas tax portion and the state appropriation piece. We do know that the gas tax portion is constitutionally protected, so we will get that part, and that has been projected and provided to us over the next 5 years in a ramp-up period. So we're very comfortable absorbing this. And we have concluded that at an estimated 2% issuance interest rate that we're very, very comfortable that this is the right time to do this. So, and secondly, I just want to highlight that all of the items proposed to be funded were included in the capital improvement plan that we brought forth in April and May. So no new surprises or additions to that. This has been vetted and talked about for almost a year now, so we're finally here. So thank you.
I would so move we send this to the full board.
We have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Thank you, committee. Next up is our finance report.
Yes, what we have is the financial statements for the 4 months ended April of 2016. So we are 1/3 of the way through the fiscal year, hence our annual budget benchmark of 33.3%. Our actual expenditures are below that at 31.5%. However, as I point out each quarter, April does not include the second quarterly transfers, which affect the total dollars that are spent. And again, that occurs next month in May. If we look at specific results, again, we're below in terms of expenditures, which is the good news. However, revenues are coming in a little bit below pace if we look at the prior 3-year average and so forth. Other than that, we're pretty much on track for the fiscal year. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or discussion? Thank you, Mr. Latham. Move on now to item 5, other business. We need a motion and support to pay the claims. Motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimous. Didn't see any other minutes. Our July reporting schedule, I believe, is just finance at the moment. So we return to public comment. No public comment. Committee member comments? Okay, no committee member comments, we'll adjourn to the call of the chair. Thank you.